Please give a few past lives that resonate with this life for him.
The entity has worn the orange garb and been the warrior priest or monk, as you would call it. This would be as to the high mountain ranges into that of the Shaolin or the Tibetan lifetimes itself. For here it has sat high in the Andes themselves in different countries over periods of lifetimes, and has, from the Hindu to the Buddhist to other specialized and remote consciousness, even the Sufism, you'll say, the self has investigated, attempting to look for the truth in an inward journey. Here the discipline of the warrior and of the monk, or a combination of those lifetimes in which he was physically able to use the bare hand or the empty hand defenses, you'll see, martial arts as they would be called presently, was highly skilled and very disciplined. These lives resonate with the entity at this time, in which the entity may go to the other extreme, or he may balance between the two, coming to some continuity of being disciplined and playful, or allowing himself to enjoy life to a great extent, not to hedonism, but to a point of enjoying pleasure where he has denied himself in previous experiences. In this life, coming to some sort of balance point between that of the physical and the carnal, and that of the spiritual, restrictive, or humbling and denying experiences of these monk-like experiences or monk retreats and lifestyles. For the defilement of the body and the denial of the body is not the way to ultimate control over the entirety of the self. This extreme must be met in another extreme, and therefore attempting not to live in extremes, but to put limits on desires, would be closer to the entity's, let us say, destiny or direction or karma. To better to experience all things, to be confident and serene within, while strong and vital without. It is acceptable to do anything that the self wishes to do. However, to be in the world and of the world is more along the line of being correct in experiencing all things in the world, which is the ultimate objective of each and every soul, so that it can rise above the temptations, distractions of the physical world, that it might leave behind those aspects of this dimension and aspire to the greater consciousness that is taken with the self into the other or higher dimensions, and that one emotion, that one thing, that it is the only thing that is progressed or taken with the self, is the understanding of love. To be love, to be full of love, and to understand love is that would be taken forth. We find the entity attempting to understand this concept, even in the attempt to understand it intently, might be an error. It would be better to playfully accept and come to the inevitable understanding. For love is a multi-dimensional thing, indeed. But to understand unconditional love and to be loving unconditionally, this does take more than at least one lifetime to accomplish. As then the entity was powerful and capable and dedicated to finding out even the most simplest truths intellectually and applying them to the great record of the world itself. Attempting to seek within himself as to his previous experiences and lifetimes to bring upon himself that knowledge that was gained in previous times. The entity studied hard and long in tombs and catacombs, meditating and chanting to great lengths. These resonate with the entity at this time, along with those other lifetimes in which the entity has sought political might and power and prestige in Rome, in the Ottoman Empire, in Armenia. We find here even into Africa itself, in which there would be, even this would appear to be in the south area or the Zulu, you'll say. The entity has experienced specific and direct positions or points of authority or might. The sword nor the mind separately are the way to God. The entity's attempt to come to this greater understanding is a combination of the inner power, the inner strength, that it is everlasting.
Pause for a second, please. Continue.
And like a blade of grass blowing in the wind, the simple faith that no matter what befalls the self, it can endure. This is what the entity seeks in this lifetime, not to be too concerned over the extremes, but to be prepared for those times in which there may come into the world a time of extreme, a chaotic time, that it is presently being experienced, and through this chaotic time to be prepared to have a place that could be called its own, to have that would be food or seeds that could produce food, and that to have plenty of water or a good water source, to be self-sufficient and self-reliant in the physical aspects, to hold to self some coins, silver and gold, to have real wealth, perhaps precious and semi-precious stones to supplement the coins, you'll say. This is the intention, to be self-sufficient, not to be held in debt to anyone. Then this will allow the serenity of that has been gained in previous times to come forth, and there would not be fear or anxiety, want or even need, for the self will be living in harmony with all that would be in the physical world, being able to meet these times of extremes, these times of teaching or testing time, you'll say. Well, this is the time in which the self has prayed to exist. Somewhat back eons of years ago, to come to this point in which the self might ascend to the higher dimensions, in which the world will no longer be on the threshold of war or destruction or extremes, but that the world will usher in a time of 1,000 years of peace, in which all in the world will live in peace. This is the time, the threshold, and the self has prayed to be here, and this is a result of those lives of extremes in which the entity has lived, in the temple or in the palace, you'll say. Direction.
And what particular business or direction does the Creator want this entity to pursue?
As we have given previously, the Creator does not wish any particular thing for any entity, save that there would be a state of love or harmony in any occupation or activity. To be in accord with the spiritual aspects that are constructive and creative is to be in harmony with the creative force or God Almighty. Not to be confused, anyone can approach God many paths up the same mountain. It does not matter which path the self takes. It only matters that the self is willing to take the steps and to seek the apex, that central point of return to the Christ consciousness, to the Christos, to Nirvana, to that as to union with the universal mind, or to come to that central point of bliss. Whatever the self chooses to name this destination, the self may acquire it by taking the steps. And again, we suggest here that through enthusiasm, the self will find its way. For this one, it would be to build up the body, to encourage strength and courage and the ability to overcome any uncertainty or challenge that may befall oneself. To be somewhat of an example or a teacher of this, shall say. Well, this one has an inner strength that can be, let us say, reassuring and to some degree amplified, even contagious, in affecting others to find within themselves a little more than they thought possible. The entity has many capabilities, but we would find being somewhat of an instructor or somewhat of using physical advancement to train the physical body and to have a certain serenity within would be some occupation that the entity might find pleasing. But he is capable of examining things underwater, and he is capable of preaching or teaching others of the greater things in life. Direction.
What was meant in this first reading that said, I am capable of examining things underwater?
It would mean that his mind would be able to project into the depths, that he would be able to see beyond the physical senses or the limits of the physical senses, that he could see deep into the realms as of the sea of thought, as well as that it would be project his mind along the bottom, looking for that might have been deposited there from previous surface vessels, you'll say. It has the ability to remote view, you'll say, if this would be a term he would accept.